You ever wonder what happens when people who think they own you try to step onto land that's not theirs? Well, let me tell you something. The day the HOA sent thugs to my ranch, I realized just how far arrogance can go, and how far I was willing to protect what mattered to me. This isn't just a story about property lines or HOA rules. It's about a man who tried to live peacefully, and the people who pushed him too far. And let me warn you, when peace is stolen from a rancher's heart, what comes next will echo forever. Strong emotional opening, peaceful tone. My name's Daniel. 60 years old, a widower, and a rancher through and through. I live on the same 40 acres of land my father bought after returning from Vietnam. Every inch of it carries memories of my late wife's rose garden, the oak tree where my kids carved their names, and the barn where I taught my grandson how to rope his first calf. Life out here wasn't rich in money, but it was rich in peace. I woke every morning to the sound of cattle lowing, sun rising over the hills, and the wind carrying the scent of sagebrush, at least. Until the HOA from the neighboring subdivision decided my land was theirs to control. One morning, as I was fixing a fence post, a shiny black SUV rolled down my gravel drive. Out stepped a man in a tailored suit, polished shoes completely out of place on ranch soil. His name was Richard, the self-proclaimed president of the HOA, from the newly built luxury homes next to my property. He didn't bother with pleasantries. "Mr. Daniel," he said sharply, "your ranch is an eyesore for our community. We'd like you to remove those old barns, the livestock, and keep the land tidy according to HOA guidelines." I set down my hammer and stared at him, holding back my anger. "Sir, this ranch has stood here for over 40 years. I'm not part of your HOA. You don't get to tell me what to do." He smirked, like I was some child. "Everything around here falls under our jurisdiction. If you don't comply, there will be consequences." I chuckled, but not out of humor. "You step one boot onto my land again, and you'll see consequences you never dreamed of." His eyes narrowed. He didn't like being told no. Over the next week, strange things started happening. My mailbox was smashed. My cattle gate left wide open. At night, I'd hear cars idling on the edge of my property, headlights flashing. One evening, my daughter called me. "Dad, I'm worried about you." "Maybe you should just move somewhere quieter." I sighed. "This is our home, sweetheart. I won't let anyone bully us out of it. Not while I'm still breathing." But deep down, I knew the storm was coming. It was a Saturday afternoon when they finally came. 4 men in leather jackets and steel-toe boots pulled up in 2 trucks. They walked straight onto my land like they owned it, carrying crowbars and baseball bats. One of them shouted, "Old man, the HOA says you gotta clear out. We're here to help you pack." I stepped off my porch slowly, my dog growling by my side. My heart was pounding, but my voice was steady. "You boys don't belong here. You've got 5 seconds to leave," they laughed. "You gonna make us?" One sneered, swinging his bat against a fence post. What they didn't realize was that a rancher always knows his land better than any outsider. I whistled low, and my dog lunged, barking fiercely, forcing one of the thugs to stumble back. At the same time, I flicked a switch hidden by the barn floodlights, lit up the entire ranch yard, blinding them. "I still think this is your land?" I growled. The men tried to advance, but they weren't ready for what came next. See, I had spent years setting up this ranch with traps not for people, but for coyotes and trespassers. One thug stepped into a pit I dug for predators, his legs sinking knee-deep in mud and water. Another tried to climb the fence, but got tangled in the barbed wire. The leader, furious, charged at me with a crowbar. But I grabbed the wooden handle of my old shovel and blocked him, swinging it with the strength of a man fueled by fury and memory. The crack echoed, and he fell to the dirt, groaning. I stood over him, chest heaving. "This land has fed my family, held my wife's tears, and carried my father's blood. You will not take it from me." The thugs weren't so tough anymore. Crawling, limping, cursing, they dragged themselves back to their trucks. One even muttered, "We didn't sign up for this." Before spitting on the ground and driving off, I stood in the dust, hands trembling, adrenaline still roaring in my veins. I wasn't proud of what I did, but I knew one thing: sometimes you don't get to choose the fight. Sometimes the fight comes to you. The next morning, Richard showed up again, furious. "You assaulted my men," he barked. "No," I said calmly. "I defended my home." He threatened lawsuits, police, everything he could think of. But little did he know, I'd already called the sheriff and handed over the security footage from my cameras. When the deputies arrived, Richard's smirk finally cracked. His hired thugs were already wanted for assault in another county, and now he was tied to them. The sheriff turned to me. "Daniel, don't worry. You're in the clear. They won't be bothering you again." That night, I sat on my porch with a cup of coffee, staring at the stars. My daughter called again. "Dad, are you okay?" She asked softly. "I'm fine, sweetheart. But I want you to remember something." "What's that?" I looked out over the ranch, the same land that had carried every joy and sorrow of my life. When people try to take what's yours, you don't just fight for land. You fight for your memories, your family, your dignity. And that fight is worth every scar. She was quiet for a moment, then whispered, "Mom would be proud of you." I felt tears welling in my eyes. For the first time in a long while, I let them fall. So, if you're watching this, maybe you've had someone try to push you around too. Maybe not an HOA, maybe not thugs, but someone who thought they could take away your peace, your happiness, your home. Let me tell you, stand tall. Protect what matters. Because when the dust settles, it's not about property lines. It's about the love and legacy that land or home carries with it. And if you've ever stood your ground when someone tried to take what was yours, share your story in the comments. I'd love to hear it. This story is just the beginning. There is so much more ahead. Subscribe to the channel to join me on this journey.